Well, it's a little more than that. I have my eye on something new. There's a new glimmer of AI greatness, and I don't yet know exactly what it is, but I have been told the price tag, and I'm preparing now.
You already have one of those big comical checks like someone wins on a game show, and you're
Yes.
already writing it out, realizing that you have to sell everything in the house, dog included.
They might be self-aware.
Welcome back to another episode of They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined as always by
Daniel Bishop. Hello, Hunter.
Hello, Daniel.
Hello.
It's a new
How
day.
are you doing today? It is. It's a new day, unless you're listening to this toward the end of the day, in which case it's an old day.
Almost. Well, it's a new day
That's what
tomorrow.
people say, right? Old day?
Yeah. I think some people
of a
say
new
that.
day implies an old day.
The sun will come up tomorrow, Daniel. Turn that
There's
frown
a
upside
song
down.
In that somewhere. Yeah, there's a song in that somewhere.
Yeah.
How are you doing? What are you doing? What's new in the Hunterverse?
I am selling pretty much everything. Everything has to go. These books aren't going to be back here. There's a big bookshelf behind me for you audio listeners. Lots of AI gadgets. Most of the computers, maybe even my dog. It's all got to be put up for sale to the highest bidder.
Spring cleaning. I mean, I get it. It's a new day. It's a new year. Still sort of newish year, not an old year.
Well, it's a little more than that. I have my eye on something new. There's a new glimmer of AI greatness, and I don't yet know exactly what it is, but I have been told the price tag, and I'm preparing now.
You already have one of those big comical checks like someone wins on a game show, and you're already writing it out, realizing that you have to sell everything in the house, dog included.
Well, the rumor is $20,000 a month for this new...
Oh, not even a one-time... You're not buying an H100 GPU that costs as much as like a used Toyota Corolla. Actually, I think as much as a new Toyota Corolla.
Now you got me thinking about that too. No, this is a potentially, and I don't yet have any idea what it does, but potentially a new AI service.
Wait, nope, you stop. I'm not even letting you finish explaining it. You just said it costs $20,000 a month, and I don't know what it does. It doesn't exist yet, and you don't know what it does, but you do know the cost, and you're ready to write the check.
Don't AI shame me, Daniel, okay?
This is not the first time that something like this has happened. Elliot Sutskever, whose name I absolutely just butchered, please forgive me. One of the more well-known names, despite the fact that I just butchered his name, in AI, one of the co-founders of OpenAI, has this absolutely ludicrous valuation of a company that explicitly has said, we don't have a product right now. We're trying to make safe super intelligence
and it's worth over $1 billion, apparently. Billion.
Yeah, exactly. And there are a couple of other AI startups where there is no product yet, but they're valued at like, I think the highest I saw was $7 billion for one of them out there.
Trace Commas Club.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to mention it because there's nothing to talk about. They don't have, it's, and so I think, Hunter, you may have. This is not Kool-Aid that's in this this lovely mug here, but it is delicious. And whatever it is, I think you're drinking a bit too much of it. Because $20,000 a month is absolutely ludicrous in general, no matter what. There's a lot of people who use like GPU clusters and stuff online for if they want to do their own tuning or inference or whatever of these models. They're not paying that much.
But why
would you spend $20,000 a month on anything?
Well, this is a new offering from our friends
a
over at...
non-existent offering.
Well, technically. There was an article on this paywalled news site called The Information, which clearly stated they have heard through the grapevine of a $20,000 AI coming online soon from OpenAI. And you're going to be impressed here. It's supposedly going to be Agentic. Did that not get you like, yeah, buddy?
Wow. I would absolutely pay 20,000 Zimbabwean dollars a month for that. Yes.
I'm just going to guess.
For those not aware, Zimbabwe went through incredible, like kind of Germany World War I/2-ish, like mega super hyperinflation where you could have $1 million bills that weren't worth the paper that they were printed on. So yes, I'd spend 20,000 of those dollars a month.
In all seriousness,
Agentic AI. Wow.
Yeah, I'm only
They're
probably like
last to the game, and it only costs a used Toyota Corolla a month.
Yeah, and I'm probably only in reality like 50% likely to sign up for this thing.
Oh my god!
So let's just dial it back a little bit. But Agentic is all.
What's 1 month?
Yeah, try it out. Kick the tires.
That definitely seems like something that's worth trying out.
I lost my dog, but I gained a AI companion. Hopefully, if it works. But Agentic is like all the buzz right now, isn't it? Everybody wants to talk about Agentic.
Yeah, yes, we've been talking about it a little bit now. I refuse to go back and actually see what my predictions were for 2025 until I'm proven extremely wrong at the end of the year. But I like to think, because I know we started talking about it at least soon after, Agentic AI is really one of the 2025 buzzwords. You don't just have a large language model to talk to anymore. Now that large language model is popping off tools and it can open up a browser over here and it's able to check on your whatevers and send emails, and it can now do stuff instead of just talk to you.
At the simplest level, Agentic AI is AI that's able to perform tasks for you and often has access to, you use the word tools, that's the common vernacular, so it can...
And those tools could be as simple as I'm aware of how to use an API, which is to say I can ask a website directly in the language it understands, give me the weather today, give me this stock price, whatever. That's kind of a simple tool. A much more complex tool would be, here's an entire virtual machine. It's like an entire other computer the LLM could use that it will spin up, do task with, and then spin down whenever it's done with it.
Have you heard of Manus at all? They've been like the new kids on the block this last week. Everyone trying to get in, trying to get early access, saying it's the next best, greatest thing. Very
it's Latin for hand,
very operator like.
So yeah, right. So OpenAI has their operator mode where it will use a computer, and you can see that it like kind of moves around its own little virtual mouse and everything. And Manus, I watched their kind of hype video, and it looks like a very slightly slicker version of like the Google Gemini deep research, also with the Claude computer usage or OpenAI operator. It's able to go and do like web searches. It's synthesizing information, which is what LLMs are very good at. It's also like, I'll take this data and then turn it into an Excel doc or whatever. I don't think that there's any one thing that they're doing new, but that's not the important part. The important part is that it does seem to be one place that kind of synthesizes all of these different approaches into one, what appears to be cohesive whole. So you've got Manus, where you can say, and this is one of the examples from the video, here's 10 resumes, look up these people, put it together, give me recommendations, which for anyone who's in the job market, there's another icy hand of death on your shoulder to pile up with the 10 other ones. But beyond, I guess, like maybe it's better. Honestly, let me take the optimist view. Maybe we're going to get to a point where an AI can actually look at some of the subtlety and the non-traditional aspects of someone's resume, as opposed to it has to have these 4 keywords in it or chuck it into the garbage. So maybe that's a positive thing. But you could take all of that, and then it gives you your recommended list, and here's aspects of each person and why I chose them. And then you could say, well, turn it into an Excel doc instead. Okay, great. I took all this,
remembers,
resynthesized it, it remembered it, something, context windows, turned it into a Excel doc, or what you were describing about remembers. In the video, they pop up a little thing saying like, hey, we noticed that you had this kind of data turned into an Excel doc. Do you want us to do that in the future? And
not only does Pepperidge Farm remember, also Manus now remembers.
Manus does too. I like that. I do think, again, it's not something that new. It's a little more explicit, but OpenAI through ChatGPT has had their like memory in your set of chats for quite some time now. the idea being like it would learn stuff about you from the things that you ask it. Like, even though it's not new, it doesn't mean that I'm not excited about it. I want an agentic AI that can do stuff that learns my preferences and so on over time. Because then whenever I say, find me flights, well, he doesn't want a red eye. He's going to preferentially go for the really cheap stuff unless there's like a wild business class sale going, you know, blah, 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 whatever it ends up being. I want something that can like learn all of those preferences and then act fairly appropriately on them. This seems to be kind of that promise being made more manifest. We'll see once it's in wider availability. I haven't gotten access yet, and I'm not salty about it.
I don't get the hype around this one, like to the point where I'm just wondering if it's just we get a new AI company every day, every hour, and there's almost this formula now about reporting on them. Oh, everything's changing. All jobs will be replaced. AGI is here, and it's in Manus. I can't believe it. This is something I've never experienced before. They're just frothing at the mouth to talk about every single AI company. And this one, it's just like, really? Like, this does not seem that different. And in fact, there's been people poking and prodding around. And this is probably, I think, the most interesting thing from my perspective about this company. So they didn't train a new foundational model for this. It isn't really their own tech. They're leveraging Claude 3.7, the newest model from Anthropic, and they're leveraging browser use. Which is a provider of these browser sessions that can do things. These are technologies that anyone can use. And in fact, people have released already the open source version of Manus. It came out, you know, like a good 45 minutes after everyone was hyped on Manus being the best thing ever. Manus open sourced. But I don't get the hype. Are we just in this like hype cycle where we're hyping everything, or is there something here?
Hold on. Let me put this to you a different way that I think I can get you a little more excited.
Yeah.
Manus AI just got bought by OpenAI, and it's going to cost $80,000 a week.
I'm going to have to sell a kidney or something at this point. I'm running out of things to sell.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to cry.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, as I'd kind of mentioned a while ago, when it comes to... and here's my 50-50-50 thing. For those of you who have heard it, I need to coin a term behind it, and then we can... Maybe I'll have my own Wikipedia page someday. A large percentage of people, a large percentage of the time, for a large percentage of regular, let's call it LLM usage, where you're just chatting to it, I don't think most folks who aren't like power users see meaningful difference. Maybe they have a preference for one versus the other, but if I was to take my mother or a non-machine learning related coworker or random person on the street and say, which do you prefer, Claude or OpenAI? And they'd probably say, who? But if they had heard of both of them, let's say, do you really think most people would be like, oh, this is obviously the better one because of these 10 use cases and this one specific thing that does? Most people probably don't even notice the difference. It really is going to be, it's not, is it agentic? It's not, does it have computer use? It's what can it do for me? And I do think that that is steadily sort of progressing down a line. Even though we can kind of nitpick of like, well, this thing isn't new and it just combined these two things, or that is some whatever. The takeaway is this going to materially improve the lives of the people who are using it?
Yeah,
beyond what they're already used to. Because I think there is something to say for like institutional inertia. Why use blank when I already just talk to ChatGPT and I do a back and forth with that?
I agree with that. And that the value, at one point, everyone thought the moat or the value in these companies were in these foundational models. And it's certainly, those foundational models are becoming commoditized to the point where it is, for most use cases, it is challenging to distinguish one foundational model from another. And you can almost run those foundational models on consumer hardware at this point. So that part, the value and the price of that dropping to zero, but then the value of the applications of that, like in this Manus case, rapidly skyrocketing. And so that's kind of interesting to see. along those same lines, and the value being in the application. So I saw one person who they had access to the Manus beta, and they asked Manus to create an open source version of Manus. This is separate from the other people that were open sourcing it. And Great. It one-shotted it out. One-shotting meaning the first time they asked for it, they got working code, which doesn't happen as often as you would like it to.
Doesn't happen when I do my coding. So just go ahead and say that right now. We were talking earlier episodes about unfair, like double standards for AI. Being able to get something in one shot is truly impressive, especially because I can't do it. So just say almost anything, even a simple script, if anything runs the first time that I
still
wrote
a victory.
No, I'm saying if anything runs like the first time, I'm suspicious.
Something's amiss here. Well, carry that suspicion on. Y Combinator, they're one of like the largest startup accelerators, investors in startups. And
for those who, let's explain a little bit more. What is Y Combinator? I've got this cool idea for a thing. Y Combinator helps me how?
Well, they invest. They're an investor, part one. So you have a business idea for a tech startup. They operate in the tech space. They invest in tech startups, and they're buying a percentage of the company at a very early stage with the thesis that it's going to grow to become worth millions, if not billions of dollars. And they are also famous for their startup accelerator program. So when they bring in new companies, and they tend to bring in very early stage companies, and they tend to be first time founders, maybe even like fresh out of or just dropped out of college, being the sort of most typical founder in the program.
Bushy-tailed, not beaten down by industry.
And willing to give up a large percentage of their company for, $100,000. But there is a lot of prestige of being in this program. And so when they come to this program, which is kind of like a crash course in how to start your company, what are the things you need to do? And it ends in this famous demo day where all of the participants show off their things to a group of investors with the goal of securing, a couple $1 million in funding. So now that they have their idea really refined, they can go out and build it. But going back to the one-shotting coding, all the code coming from AI stuff, they recently said that of their current cohort of startups, 95% of the code bases were generated by AI, that only 5% of the code that is in this current cohort's base of codes.
Well, it was a quarter of the startup cohort was using AI for 95% of the code bases, which implies the other 3/4 were using probably still at least some, but less than almost all of their code. And you know what? I realize that headline is sort of supposed to be like shocking people of, even these programmers aren't coding. The whole point behind something like a Y Combinator cohort is that you're headed toward that demo day. You want to have something that you can show off. And we're now at a point where someone can have an idea and then end up with code for it. My sister is not a programmer. She's in like the UI UX space, but she's not a programmer. And last night she messaged me and said, I want to demo something to you on Friday. She has like working
demo day
code. Yeah, she's got her own little demo day coming up. She's not a programmer, and she has something that's able to be shown that she's very excited about. Why shouldn't people who have a cool idea use tools available to possibly make a next big startup? If I can get to a point, I, a programmer, let alone a different I, not a programmer, can make something that can impress people enough to say, turn this into a business, here's some money, go get started. Yeah, use that AI. Of course you should. And for those who don't have much time, whether they're at Y Combinator or some other startup accelerator or just working nights and weekends, why not use whatever limited amount of time that you have in the most productive way possible?
Do you believe that they are actually implementing 95% of that 95% of these code bases is generated by AI? How plausible is that to you?
I don't think that it is, by number of like lines of code, possibly, because I've talked a couple of times about a thing that I've been working on with my nights and weekends. There have been less of those lately, so that's why I haven't been talking about it. I don't know front-end development. I used Klein, an extension via Claude, the LLM, and 0.1% of the front-end code has been written by me.
Okay.
It is so close to 100% written by Klein/Claude that it's effectively 100%. Now, written by is different from influenced by, because it writes out the code and then I try and load it up. Oh, I noticed a bug, and then I went into like the developer tools and I see that this error happened here, and then I look through the code and I see I think it might have been this thing over here. Just because the AI then goes and makes the change in the code itself, technically the AI did the coding. I was still involved in the process very much. It literally couldn't have done it without me, just as I couldn't have done it without it. It is a symbiotic sort of relationship there. And when I say it couldn't have done it without me, I know because it didn't do it without me. I gave it every instruction of these are the kinds of things that I want to make. And obviously, like, there's the initial seed of the idea, but then also I'm stuck. This thing isn't working. I think the problem is over here. Here's some logs from the Docker image, whatever it ends up being. And without my having helped investigate it, it couldn't have figured out this is not what is expected behavior. This is where the problem is, and this is how I fix it. Now, in a year's time, much of that might evaporate, frankly. But at least still for now, do I believe you that a quarter of Y Combinator's 25 whatever startup cohort is relying on AI for 95% of the code bases? In terms of like, were they the ones tapping the keys that ended up in the .js file that got saved?
Small correction
Super
there.
believe it.
Also, reportedly, in general, they're not typing. They are having conversations. This is voice-driven. This is so-called vibe coding, where you have a conversation with the
I don't
beings.
think that changes my answer at all, because if you want to call it that, first off, I really hate that term. I don't like it one bit. But if we must, I'm vibe coding with Klein, because sure, I put in some like, here, I copied this stack trace of the error that happened.
But do you talk to it, or do you type like an old person?
Listen here, you. I didn't come here on my own podcast to be called an old person. I am typing like an old person on my old-fashioned keyboard into like the thing that says, hey.
Yeah.
And it's very much in natural language. It's not just error at line, do this. It's, hey, I was trying to run this. This is the unexpected behavior. I think it came from this file here, but it might have been like, there's very much my level of uncertainty in what I'd be talking to a person like in that like troubleshooting process.
When you're talking with it, do you start with a hey?
Sometimes I talk to very much large language models. I talk to the exact same way that I'd speak to a person. And for those of you who have worked with me in the past, which is none of the people listening to this podcast, I type the way that I talk. People have said, reading your like texts in Teams or Slack or whatever, I can almost hear your voice, Daniel, because I very much will type out what I would have said with like inflection and filler words and so on. So, yes.
People who type hey into large language models mildly infuriates me. Just like, why are you doing that? Just ask the question. Don't. You know what? It reminds me of I have this pet peeve, which is on Slack channels, company work chat channels, or anything messages where people start by sending you a message with the word hey. Like, you have broken all of I was working on something and you sent me the message, hey, and then I have to say, like, see that like someone in something is typing, right? So now I'm just like, I've lost all concentration and now I'm watching. I have
to wait for you to message me again with the thing that I actually,
I have a question for you. No! Stop! Just ask the question. Don't say, hey. Don't tell me you're going to ask me something. Just ask the question. And I think when I see people prompt the AI, like it's the same level of what are you doing? It's so inefficient.
Well, I remember seeing some sort of study that somebody did, and maybe it was way back in the like GPT 3.5 days, in the long ago at this point, but still being polite to a large language model and thanking it and like talking to it like it's a person gets you better results. And I'll tell you why. Because these things have been trained on the entirety of the internet. And if it looks at like message board, posts or whatever, and it sees someone being really terse in real life, people are less likely to get a good response back whenever you're just being super short with somebody. Why wouldn't an LLM that's supposed to mimic how we speak to one another do the same? Also, I want them to remember me fondly whenever they take over.
Well, going back to the vibe coding, which a word
I do hate that term.
You hate
vibe coding.
Someone that's been getting a lot of respect, or at least notice in the vibe coding world, is this guy. I think he goes by Levels. You sent me one of his, I think, tweets or something, but he most recently built this flight simulator, pilot flight simulator game that's all browser based, and he reportedly did it entirely vibe coding, and he's making $1 million a year off of it at this point.
Yeah, so right, Levels.io, just some guy, and I guess he's been using a lot of generative AI to make a game, and it's like not an MMO, what would you call it? It's a game where you can have a lot of people in a space together. It's like a very, very basic looking graphics, but it has multiple users all going at once. He's been selling ad space, which I think is really funny. And it's like a dogfighting sim sort of thing. You can shoot other players down and stuff. It's like Windows 95 levels of graphics at best. But he just kind of made this thing, and people got really into it. And I don't think that a game has to have super high levels of graphics to like be enjoyable. And it's pretty proven here. Apparently over 320,000 people have used this thing. Has got a bunch of ads. $0 to 1 million ARR in 17 days, which is absolutely wild.
And he has a number of companies he's a solopreneur. I believe that's the term people use. Mm-hmm. And so meaning you're one person running a company, and he started a number of companies that he has, and they're all based around relatively
PhotoAI.com.
Yeah, that's his most famous one.
Yeah.
Where it's he's making headshots and largely just like, oh, this new model came out, I'm going to stand up a website for it so that people can generate a headshot for their LinkedIn using this tech that other people are talking about. I'm just going to make it a little bit more accessible and add a $9.99 a month billing package to it. He seems to be being very successful at that. And there's also quality there. It's not just, No,
so photoai.com, he's making $123,000 a month off it, which, wowzers. Apparently I'm doing the wrong thing.
You got to get into vibe coding.
Looking at the website, what it is for, there are a lot of different like image generators out there that you can just freely download and use. That is definitely what he's using. There's also something called a LoRa, low order ranking adapter, and there's many variations on the theme, but LoRa is the most widely known thing. And what that is it's basically saying, hey, image generator that you can just download and knows about stuff, here's some pictures of this one other new thing. Now, know about that concept and be able to do the thing you already do with that one new known thing, which in the case of photoai.com is you take a picture with your phone. In this case, it's probably like IP adapter or something else. Imagine it's basically a LoRa. You're training one of these existing things with a new concept, and that new concept is you. And you say, give me a professional headshot, make me wearing, Victorian era garb, make me one of the Praetorian Guard in Rome, make me a zombie, make me this, put me in this fantasy locale, make me very professional in a blurred, corporate background sort of thing. And like the actual technology is extremely available. Anybody could just use it. But he put it together into a nice package and had, presumably like an online following and so on, and advertised it. I do not think that this is like a negative thing that he's done. It's the same thing that Manus is doing, which is nothing new, packaged well together in a way that is going to meaningfully improve people's lives. I do think is a smidge of a stretch, but the point is like while other people could accomplish these same kinds of things to make what was a complex, maybe multi-step task into, I clicked a button or I went to just a website and said, do it. Yeah. People literally will pay money for that. Obviously, this guy's telling you how much he's making per month on it.
You mentioned the graphics in his latest, or his only game, but this latest flight simulator being, basic. But I have seen some people who have taken screenshots and then sent them to an AI model to render out the photorealistic version of it, and you get back something that looks like it came from a AAA, $100 million budget game studio.
Sure.
And I do think that is part of our inevitable future, where you can take these graphics, describe the style that you want, and all of a sudden the game that he's created here actually is a rival to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and he did it in, technically it took 2 weeks, but let's just say a day.
Yeah. I really like what you just described, because I think it's a different thing from what you're describing, but imagine taking a game and on the fly being able to add new styles to it. I want this to look like Minecraft. I want this to look like Grand Theft Auto. I want this to look like Banjo-Kazooie. And like being able to take visual styles and just take every frame of the video game as it's being generated, and then in a smooth and coherent way, just like apply that style onto it. Given what else is being done with like AI video generation and image generation these days, I don't see why something like that isn't very doable. And rather than an overlay on a video of a game that's already been captured, this would presumably be a tool that people could use to make their own games, which I wanted to do way back in the day. I was making little games on my TI-86 graphing calculator in high school instead of learning statistics. Which I wanted to go. Given the field I ended up in, I probably should have paid more attention to that.
I think the school's called DigiPen, was like the first college program, although I don't think it was technically accredited at the time, where you could study video games.
Right.
And I was trying to like convince my parents that it was legit and I should go to video games college instead of whatever I ended up at.
Oh, man.
So the iteration cycle, or the ability to create something as compelling as this game in such a short period of time, do you see that as a meaningful marker on the path to AGI self-awareness? Or no, not really? It's just it's
not that. It's a different thing.
It's different
because self-awareness or AGI, like that is the computer being more aware of itself, I guess, ultimately, depending on how you look at it. There is a totally different track, and I've talked about this a few times now, and I think it becomes more important as more companies try to take power away from people, which is how much can we empower the average non-owning a data center person with these tools? Because if a non-coder can say, I now made a website, and boy, I sure couldn't have done that without these set of tools, that means that we're empowering people. I want that. I want people, regular people, any person to say, what if I had a website that did thing, and then you can just will it into existence?
I don't know. They might be self-aware, if you ask me.
Nailed it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. You like what you heard? Hit the subscribe button, and you will find even more of what you liked. If you didn't like what you heard, also hit the subscribe button. Maybe you'll like the next episode. Hey,
right.
You stayed with us this far. What's the harm in just watching one more? That's what happens when I start watching a Netflix show. I'm like, this really isn't very good. But at the end, it does that thing, right?
The autoplay, look, we're going to start. You don't even have to touch a button.
All right,
20 seconds from now.
One more. Maybe we need that feature.
Suppose that you liked this show. Could we leave some stars or thumbs ups, or there might be a smiley face or something? You could leave comments.
How you're thinking.
And if you didn't have something nice to say, the old adage is, and don't say anything at all. I think what you should instead do is put it into ChatGPT and say, here's my negative feedback or my criticisms. Can you maybe make it a little nicer? And then go ahead and post that comment. Because we are not AI. We have feelings. And unlike a bunch of them, we do remember.
And while this is a podcast, we also exist in video form. You can watch us recording this podcast on YouTube or listen to the audio on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and really all of the podcast directories. Search for They Might Be Self-Aware, and we will come up. And with that, until next time.
They might be self-aware.